On behalf of Roanoke College Alumni Association, I welcome each of you to the series NOKELive. My name is Sally Logan Walker, and I serve the college as the Director of Alumni and Donor Relations, and I have the privilege of hosting tonight's NOKELive event. Before we get started, just wanted to remind each of you viewing via YouTube that you can use the chat feature to ask questions of our presenter this evening. And once the presentation is complete, we will attempt to ask as many of your questions as possible. Tonight's event is being recorded and will be available on this YouTube channel for future viewing. A link to all of our past NOKELive events, as well as other online content here at Roanoke College, can be found on our alumni hub by visiting www.roanoke.edu/alumni. Tonight's NOKELive event topic is the college admissions process. We are joined by Dr. Brenda Pogendorf as we discuss key things that parents and caregivers should consider in supporting their student in the college enrollment process. Brenda Porter Pogendorf, class of 1981. She is an alumna of Roanoke College. Brenda has served in undergraduate enrollment management for nearly 4 decades. First at Roanoke College in admissions and at Carthage College as executive assistant to the president and vice president for enrollment. In the fall of 2007, she returned to Roanoke College as vice president for enrollment and dean of admissions and financial aid. Additionally, she has served as a consultant to several small private colleges. Dr. Pogendorf earned her BA from Roanoke College, an MALS from Hollins University, an MBA and PhD in Education, Leadership, and Policy Studies from Loyola University, Chicago. Her dissertation was on student persistence in college. She enjoys both the arts and science of recruiting and retaining students. She and her husband have 2 daughters, one who is a recent Roanoke College graduate, and one who is currently a senior at Furman University. And now it is my pleasure to invite Dean Pogendorf to begin tonight's presentation.
Thank you. That's a warm welcome. Welcome to everyone who's here tonight. It is a special pleasure for me to do this because this is a profession I love, and I've been doing it for many years, as you just heard, and I'm happy to share it with fellow alumni who may be there. I know there are a couple of alumni out there who were registered for tonight who are also experts in admissions. So somehow, if I miss something important and you want to chime in, you can do so through the chat. Happy to do that. I will share my screen and begin the presentation. So I could talk for all night on different aspects of applying to colleges, and especially today with such a changing environment, but I'm going to hit just some of the highlights. And I'll tell you this now and then again at the end. I invite you to reach out to me. My email address and phone number will be on the last slide if you would like to reach out and talk about maybe something specific that pertains to you, or to get further clarification on anything that we've talked about. So what I will talk about tonight is how this COVID-19 world that we're living in and navigating in right now has impacted the college selection process, because it has. I will talk some about the traditional opportunities and ways of looking at colleges, and some of the new opportunities that have emerged simply because it's a very rapidly changing field, and there are lots of new tools all the time, and because the COVID environment has forced us to do things differently, as in all walks of life. And I'm going to do just a very general sort of from A to B, starting your search to selecting your college, how you might walk through that. Let me also say there are great variations to this because it's really an individual thing. But what I'm giving you is sort of a basic framework from which to start. If you do things in a slightly different order than I'm telling you, there's no problem with that. That would work for you as well. The watchword for this year, I think, is flexibility, and we're feeling it with all of the families that we're working with as they look at colleges. This also should work, what I'm going to be telling you should be able to be compressed into a short amount of time. If your student is a college senior, for example, you can still do all these steps. If your student is a sophomore or even freshman in high school, that you may spread these steps out a little bit more over time. So use it as a roadmap and put the speed on it that you are comfortable with. And at the end, I'm going to share just a brief thought I have about how students can be most successful in college based on one of my college experiences. So just an overview. I'm going to talk about, get rid of this here. I'm going to talk about building your list. If you think about a funnel where you're going to start large at the top and get all kinds of possibilities into it, and as you go through, hone down as you get to that point down at the bottom, and your student selects his or her college. So you're going to start by building your list, visiting websites and other tools that are out there, applying to the colleges that get on your shorter list, visiting campuses. This is one where you can do it at various points, and more than once is fine too. And then you finally make your commitment to the college of your choice. So I'm going to walk through each of those steps. So the first piece is simply to, let me put this in better. Can you, you maybe see this better. Hold on just a minute. Okay. So there are a lot of tools out there to help you build your college list. If you go to a website like College Board, Naviance, many of your students may use that in their high school. Niche, CapEx, you can see all of these here. Circled In is a fairly new one. It just appeared on the scene in the last few months. All of these tools and more really are out there to help your student put together their list. So for example, in College Board, you can go in, student can select a geographic area, a certain size of a college. There are all kinds of variables that they can select on. And then when they hit the button, it will give a whole bunch of possibilities of colleges that met the criteria. So for example, when my younger daughter went to look at colleges, she wanted to zero into Virginia, North Carolina, and South Carolina. So those were her states. She limited it there. She knew she wanted a private college and not a public. She wanted a certain size. So it narrowed down the possibilities for her, but gave her suggestions that she didn't have on her in her radar before that. And in thinking about what criteria to use, it's really important that students spend a little bit of time sort of introspectively thinking about what kind of an environment works best for them. Is it small campus, large campus, urban, rural? What fits? And these things do matter. One of the colleges my daughter and I visited was a small college, but it was in an urban setting, and it immediately drove her crazy that she couldn't tell where the campus started and where the city was. And before we even got out of the car, she wanted to leave because she knew that wasn't the right fit for her. Good to know. It was a worthwhile visit just for that. Proximity to home is something else I see students thinking about quite a bit. Do you want someplace that's a day trip where you could get to and from campus in a day, or maybe it's an overnight trip because it's 9 or 10 hours, or maybe you're going like I did across country and you're looking at a plane trip or possibly a train trip. So that's something families should think about as well, as how close or far away from home do you want to be. Knowing something about your interests, and I'm really talking about the students in this case, but knowing their interests, whether there's a certain major they want to have, or some other program, that a sport maybe, or some club that they're looking for that's really important. Kind of come up with a list of those things that are really important to them. At this point, there should be there's no right number here, but you could have anywhere from half a dozen to a dozen colleges, generally speaking, at this point. So what do you do to narrow that down a little bit? Some people get in the car and visit all 12 colleges just because that's what they want to do. But there are ways to narrow it down even before that. So visit the websites is a really big tool that didn't exist for some of us when we looked at college, but it's very useful for families. Looking for those key things you just identified on the page before. So what are the gotta haves? If a student, I talked to a student a few years ago who had to have a college that had a marching band. Well, not everybody has a marching band, and they wanted a small college with a marching band. Well, that limited the number of colleges as well. So what are those gotta haves? What are those would like to haves? And then browse the websites looking for those possibilities. The website's a great place to get a sense of what the environment is like. Like you can see in the background of my picture, people get a sense that it's an outdoor kind of an area with the beautiful mountains in the background. Those kinds of things are helpful to students to see what it looks like, to get a sense of the people in the pictures and all of those things, and what the town around it looks like. People often forget to think about that one, but it's really important to some students to know, if I'm going to do an internship, is there anything nearby, or is it a small town? Can I walk someplace from campus and go get food or get a job perhaps, or go out to eat? Those kinds of things don't always appear right away, but they end up being important to the student's experience later on. When you're looking at the website, note any clues that they give you. They'll give you a lot about applying and how to show your interest. We'll talk more about that in just a minute, because that's an important piece right now and growing in importance with colleges. And you have to really note the important dates for each college. Our dates are not all the same. Our dates are tailored to our own college campuses. So the dates I'm talking about would be application dates and deadlines, and maybe scholarship deadlines and visit dates, and how all of those things will work. So again, each college is going to have different information there. Important that you pay attention, because some of us are more forgiving about missing a date or just missing a date than other colleges might be. You don't want to miss out on anything. So let's talk a little bit about the college application. There are so many acronyms out there. You hear early action and early decision and early action 2 and regular admission and rolling admission and all these different terms. Rolling and regular admission mean pretty much what they say. Early action, if the student checks early action on their application, they're really telling the college that they are kind of interested in you, and that they really want to know sooner what that decision is going to be about their admission. That's non-binding. So it means if the college accepts the student still has until May 1st of their senior year to make that decision. Early decision, on the other hand, means the student is telling the college, I really like your college. You're at the top of my list. And if you accept me and meet my need with scholarships, and we'll talk about that in just a few minutes, or with financial aid, I will commit and withdraw all my other applications from other colleges, because I'm in at Roanoke and I'm done with my search. Early decision usually happens in October or November, depending on the college, but pretty early in the student's senior year. So just a couple of key things there. The deposit, if it's paid for the early decision, is typically non-refundable. With early action or any of the others, is typically refundable until May 1st is the typical date that we see. So just a few things about those applications and what types there are. So what are colleges going to look at? They're going to want the student to fill out the application. Students can use the application on the college's website. Roanoke has our own electronic application. We engage in the common application. Many colleges do. So students have the choice of which application they want to use. If you aren't familiar with the common application, that simply is what it says, that student can fill out one application and apply to many different colleges at the same time. There is typically an addendum for each college to ask something specific, or maybe with a particular essay question they want to ask. There are a few pieces of it that would be college specific, but most of the information that we ask for, we're all going to ask for, so it saves the student time from having to type it in over and over again. We all typically do have our own applications. We don't care. There's no preference given to which application students might use. The high school transcript is important, and this is one we get a lot of questions about from students that they think, well, I can't apply early in my senior year because I don't have any senior grades yet to show you. I only have through my junior year. That's perfectly fine. We can look at your high school transcript through your junior year and get a pretty good sense of the type of student that you are. Yes, we'll see your senior grades along the way, and we do all ask for final transcripts at the end of your senior year, but we can make an admission decision without senior grades in most cases. In some cases, we'll ask for some high school grades just to see how you're doing this year. The next area are the test scores, and the test scores I'll talk a little bit more about because that's the area that's most variable right now. Years ago, everybody submitted test scores, either ACT or SAT. These days, and especially this year, many colleges have become test optional. Roanoke became fully test optional last fall, thank goodness. So students could just opt not to submit that part. And this year, if you haven't been seeing it in the news and other places, most colleges are test optional, at least for this year, because so many students are having trouble getting to the testing sites, or they get to the testing sites and they're turned away because social distancing didn't have room for everybody who'd signed up, or tests have been canceled. That's been pretty much the pattern since March. And so, I know it's been causing a lot of stress for students because they were planning to take it and they couldn't get there, or they couldn't get in to do it. So don't fret about it. Colleges understand what you're going through, and we'll help you through that. In Roanoke's case, when you don't submit test scores, we are going to look at what we do have, which is the high school transcript, and we'll look for how you've selected courses, what kind of courses, how you've challenged yourself in high school, and then how you've risen to that challenge. So both what you've chosen to take and how you've done in those courses. We will also look at your progression. So we look at it, for example, how'd you do in your first year, second year, third year? Is there an upward trajectory, a downward trajectory? Is it been even all 4 years or all 3 years? What does that look like? So that's the piece we'll put most emphasis on. Recommendations and essays are also important, but especially so when you don't submit test scores, because we're looking for as many pieces to tell us about you as we can possibly get. So recommendations are best to come from academic teachers in core subjects such as English, math, science, social sciences, that type of thing. And we love recommendations that are really authentic about students, talking about your strengths and things you might have overcome. That's always good to know if you've had a situation like that. The essay is something I know students also stress a bit about. Overall, in the essay, what we're looking for is something to supplement everything else we've seen. We get the details of the grades and everything from your other pieces, but we really are looking to get to know you beyond what we see on your transcripts. And what we see, many students will submit a sheet summarizing all of their, like a resume with all their clubs and activities on it as well. I didn't put that on here, but that's often something that we see. So for a student to write their essay and tell us what's on that other sheet is not really all that helpful. We'd like for them to focus on something that was kind of a momentous moment for them, or it can be something, if they want to be funny about it, if they can do that well, that's good, or some kind of an experience that really moved them, made them think differently, that type of thing. I'll give you a quick example. My younger daughter was extremely shy in high school, and she knew that she was, and she worried about that going into college. So she thought about what her college experience might be like. So the summer before her junior year, she decided that she would, or before her senior year, I guess, she decided that she'd go on a mission trip. And we wanted to go with her. Her sister, her mother, I and my husband wanted to go. She wouldn't let us come with her because she said, I have to do this by myself. So she signed up with an organization and she went out of the country on a mission trip with people she'd never seen before and spent a week with. She did not write her essay about that mission trip. She wrote her essay about her thought process that brought her to do that and how important that was to her in her growth as a person. So just a bit of a different twist. At the end of the day, and I'm spending time on this because it's really important, at the end of the day, whatever is in their essay, whatever they write about, we need to know more about the student than about what they're writing about. If she had written about her mission trip and we knew all about food for the poor in Jamaica, that would have been nice, but it wouldn't have told us anything about her. So that's a bit on the essay. Another topic we've been hearing a lot about these days is is some stress on the part of high school students who know that many of the seniors who graduated in 2020 defer their admission to the fall of 2021. And students coming up as seniors are worried that those students before them are going to take some of their places, and so colleges will be even more selective and they'll have less of a chance of getting in. That may be true at some of the highest, most selective colleges, but for most of us, we have, for example, Roanoke has 30 deferred admission candidates. That's really not going to change how we admit students for next fall. We've got a little bit of flexibility there, and most colleges do. So I wouldn't worry too much about it unless you're applying to Harvard or MIT and some of those kinds of places. Through this whole process, admissions is your guide. You're going to find at colleges like Roanoke that you have a specific admissions counselor dedicated to you. They're going to reach out and try to get to know you and your student, and they really want to help you navigate all of this and tell you when it's time for this scholarship application or that fellowship application or whatever it might be, and keep you moving forward. Use them. They want to help you. So let's talk about the campus visit. These days, the campus visits have changed a little bit too. As you might know, last spring, most of us didn't welcome any visitors to our campuses because we were all closed because of the pandemic. There are still many colleges that are not taking campus visitors right now, so it's important that you check that website or call the college or university to make sure that they are still accepting visitors. Some I know have just recently opened up. A new possibility for you is for you and your student to have a virtual visit to the campus. Some colleges had virtual visits in the past before COVID, but right now I think we all do. So for example, at Roanoke, we have all kinds of information sessions that you can do virtually through Zoom, where you can hear an admissions counselor talk about the college and give you an overview of life on campus, academic, social, and every aspect. And then you can take a virtual tour. That works if you're not ready to come to campus yet, or you're not traveling because of COVID. That will give you pretty much the same presentation you'd get if you were here. It doesn't exactly replace the visit, but it gives you a really good start. So what we're seeing is that some families will do the virtual visit first as part of that weeding down process, and then come to campus and do that in-person visit. Most of the time when you visit a campus, Roanoke is true on this one, you can either visit on an individual basis where it's you and your family with an admissions counselor and with one tour guide seeing the campus, or you can come in a small group. The groups right now on any college campus are going to be small groups. We meet in the chapel and only have about 20 or 25 students at a time. So you have that choice. Some students feel more comfortable coming in a group because they don't want to be on the spot. They're not ready to have someone asking them questions and expecting them to ask questions. So in a group info session, a student can relax a little bit and let other people ask the questions. If they're just starting the process, it helps them know kind of some of the questions to ask perhaps and gives them a head start. Webinars are new in this new environment as well. Roanoke offers a lot of webinars where we have a deeper dive. It's in addition to you'd still want to do the virtual info session to get that overview, but then a webinar would take you into the details of a particular major. We might have a faculty and a student member in a certain major that you're interested in presenting, what kinds of research students do and study abroad experiences in that major and all those types of things. Could be something Residence Life offers. Our most popular webinar last spring by far was one where we talked about Residence Life, or Tuesdays with Students where you could log in, your student could log in and just chat with some of our students and get to know the campus through them. So that's a new thing. It's a great resource. Check it out on websites. There are all kinds of special visit days. I'm not sure that's so much the case right now. For example, Roanoke typically has academic exploration days. We aren't going to do those in person this year, but we will try to do them virtually later on this fall. Again, where students could go in and visit with several academic areas that they may be interested in just to get more information. There's no limit to the number of times a student can visit. We love it when they come more than once. So feel free, and that's true of any campus. Visit as many times as you'd like, and tell us who you want to talk to. Is it that coach? Is it a faculty member? You know, who would be interested, who would be interesting for you to meet with and influential in making your decision about college. And I want to talk a little bit about demonstrating interest, for students to demonstrate their interests. Parents, I'm going to say this again because it's important that the students demonstrate their interest. We love hearing from parents, but it's important that when a student is interested in our campus, that they tell us that. And they can tell us that in a number of different ways. The visit certainly tells us that. The counselors reaching out to call or email your counselor and ask a question or just check in, see how things are going, what is everything in for your application, is it complete, when might I hear, whatever it might be. That's important that we know you're interested. Remember I talked about the common application a little bit ago? Students can apply to many colleges at the click of a button at the same time. So colleges are seeing their application pools get larger, but we're trying to figure out who's really interested in our college. Because I might have just put Roanoke down and hit the button, but Roanoke wasn't. I applied to 20 colleges and Roanoke's number 20 on my list. We kind of are looking for ways to know where's Roanoke in your list. We want to know how interested you are in our college, so that demonstrated interest matters. For some colleges, Roanoke is not one, but for some colleges, if a student has not demonstrated interest, they will never be accepted. They could be a really strong student, but they won't be accepted. One of my daughter's friend's parent called me, and this girl was a really good student in high school, and her mother said, she didn't get into this college. I don't understand. And I said, did she ever visit? And they said no. And I said, go visit. Well, as soon as she visited, then she was accepted. So just know that's an important piece. So I'm going to switch gears a little bit, because for most families, talking about the cost of attending college, especially a private college, is something we need to address in that college selection process. So I want to give you just a bit of information about how this works. I'm going to be Roanoke specific, but again, the framework of what I'm giving you is pretty true to a number of colleges. Typically, at the time a student is accepted, student will learn about their merit award, which basically is when the college looks at what kind of student they've been in high school, and they've got this kind of academic performance, and here's the range, or here's their merit scholarship. And so when they are accepted, they'll often get that merit scholarship award, and they can be substantial. Roanoke's range all the way up to $29,000 a year based on high school performance. So that's something that really helps put a lot of families at ease right away. Then there are typically some kind of competitive fellowships or scholarships. Roanoke has both competitive scholarships and fellowships. The fellowships happen to be in a number of different areas, where think of it as a glorified higher level kind of a job on campus. They can do research with faculty members. That would be a research fellow. There's an entrepreneurial studies fellowship with one of our faculty members. There's their marketing and communications, IT for students who have IT experience and expertise. The IT department is always looking for fellows there. Joe Boucher is always looking for students in student activities, and so social. The term is doing community service, community work. They're all over campus. So get on the website and your student can see those, but they are something that a student has to apply for and then interview for. And if they're selected, if they interview, they get $1,000 per year scholarship. If they're selected, they then earn a paycheck as they're doing that job for their 4 years. This is the 4-year commitment. And then there are often scholarships. For example, we have fine arts scholarships. So if a student wants to audition for the choir or the theater or show some artwork that they might share, they could earn scholarships there as well. And then the family is, if they're still looking for additional aid, and I always encourage every family in the first year to file the FAFSA, the free application for federal student aid. It's pretty simple to do because you go into the database and you pull in your taxes. If you're applying for aid for next fall, you would use your 2019 tax information, and it just pulls it all in for you, makes it easier to apply. Some colleges will also request, or in place of that, request the College Board CSS profile as their application. Roanoke just asks for the FAFSA. So the FAFSA crunches the numbers, treats everybody kind of the same way, crunches the numbers, and comes up with an expected family contribution. And I'll talk more about that in just a minute. When colleges award the need-based aid, it's typically a blend of federal grants, maybe some state aid programs. Roanoke, for example, students who attend Roanoke College or any other private college in the Commonwealth receive $3,400 a year just by being a member of the Commonwealth. So filing that application will help get you there. You may receive more institutional aid, and oftentimes there's a guarantee of work on campus, which is important to many students. So just a quick, there's usually a lot of questions about this, so I'm going to spend just a minute on how we use the information that you get, we get when you file the FAFSA. When you file the FAFSA, again, you file only once. You put in the colleges, all the colleges that you're considering to receive the information once it's been processed. So each college gets an ISER, it's called, but we get the information, we get an expected family contribution. Basic rule of thumb, and the reason I'm going, let me just, before I say that, tell you, the reason I'm going into this is because so many times we hear, well, I'm not going to file the FAFSA because my other child, we filed for my other child, or my neighbor filed and they didn't get anything, so we're not going to get anything, I'm not going to file. There are a lot of variables that matter. If let me use an example. We take the cost to attend that college, minus your expected family contribution, and then the difference there is the need that colleges are trying to help you with and help fill for you. So let me use an example. If your EFC is $20,000 and you apply to a college that costs $20,000, you have zero need. So there's no reason for the college to give you some aid unless you have merit, because there's no need. Now, if you apply to a college that is $60,000 and you have a $20,000 EFC, now there's a $40,000 need that we're trying to help you fill. Merit will fill part of that. Federal loans will fill part of that. Maybe state grant will fill part of that. And if there's still need remaining, we'll come back to Roanoke College funds. So the cost of the school that you're looking at does matter. It also matters if you've got more than one student in college at a time, because that EFC is split among the students. So if you are, what we hear sometimes is, well, I have one daughter in college already, she didn't qualify for aid. Next year I'm going to have two in college because now my son's going. Okay, that $20,000 EFC is what the family has for education expenses. Now it's $10,000 per student, and it changes the equation for the one who's already in college and for the one going to college. So I know that's a lot of information, but I want to just give you the assurance that just file it the first time and see what happens, and then work through it with the colleges. There is, I'll just mention, a process that all colleges can use that if you, especially now with the way things have been happening, but if you say to us, well, I know it pulled our 2019 information, financial information, but that's really not a good, it's not an accurate reflection of where our family's financial situation is. There is a way that we can do a special circumstance appeal. You can update the information. You don't do this by going back through the FAFSA, but you work directly with the college. We get a better picture through some documentation of what your family's financial situation is, and then we'll adjust your package in many cases. So just a quick little bit about how that works. And I'm happy to take questions in a minute if you've got them. So you've gone through the application process, you've looked at the finances, and we know that, you know, this is a decision that Students need to they need to listen to their heart and know where they want to be, where they feel they're going to blossom the most and grow the most, which colleges offer the experiences for that. But as a parent, it's also got to be a financially feasible plan as well. I understand that. So once a student has put all those together and made their decision on their college, it's time to pay the deposit, which confirms your spot in that class. Again, if you are early decision, it's typically non-refundable. If you're regular admission or early action, or any of the others, it's typically refundable until May 1st and then not refundable after that. So students can make this commitment early in the process or late. I'll use my daughters again. Our older daughter who went to Roanoke, she didn't want to go where her mother and father worked, so she really stressed about her college. She knew Roanoke was the right fit. We all knew Roanoke was the right fit, but she just was hesitant to make that commitment. So she waited until, I think it was April 28th or something, to make that decision. She waited last minute. Our younger daughter said, I'm not going to go through that stressful time. She made her decision by Christmas. So you do it the way that works for your family. Once you pay the deposit, you get to start the enrollment process by learning about housing, course selection, and most colleges these days have a summer orientation. I hope next summer we're going to be doing it in person again, but where you get to come to campus and the student meets an advisor and gets their course schedule set, meets other students, and kind of learns just some of the basics about living on that campus. So that's really the process in a nutshell. And in a minute, I will take some questions. Before I do that, I wanted to just share this thought with you. When I graduated from Roanoke, after I graduated, a girlfriend and I, she was another Roanoke student, we decided we were going to drive from her house on Long Island to my house outside of San Francisco. We were going to take this road trip. She'd never been across the country. I'd never driven across the country, so we just thought it would be a fun thing to do. So if we had been planning this trip as my father would have planned it, we would have taken a route that looks like the one you see on the screen. It's the most direct route, would have been the fastest and most direct. We would have driven certain miles a day and gotten there in a few days. We did not do that. We went this route because we wanted to, well, we started at her house, wanted to spend a few days there. Then we came down to the college because one of our good friends was getting married in the chapel. We wanted to be there for that. And then we had a friend who lived in Memphis, so we wanted to go see her. We'd never been to Memphis, and so that was a fun place to visit. And we had a friend, a sorority sister, who had just moved to Wichita, so we decided we'd go see her in Wichita, which wasn't exactly on the way. And then we decided, well, we'd go see Colorado Springs, we'd heard was a pretty place. And then we wanted to go to the Grand Canyon and ride a mule down the Grand Canyon. Scary experience, but glad we did it. And then because it was sort of on the path, we wanted to go to Las Vegas. We'd never been there. And then we wanted to drive over to the coast and then up Highway 1 to my house. That trip took us nearly 4 weeks because those places I just mentioned were our touchstones. We knew those places we wanted to hit. But when we drove, I think it took us 2 days to get from Roanoke to Memphis because we would drive along and we would see a sign for this next exit is the birthplace of somebody or other, or the, Music Hall of Fame or whatever it might be. And we would take the exit and go see what was there. So some days we only drove about 50 miles because we were busy seeing these things on the exits. And some days we drove a little bit more. My point in telling you all of this is not so much to recount my trip, but because I think that's the way students should come to college. They have a 4-year framework. And yes, Roanoke works hard to make it a 4-year path for students. So point A, you're going to start on the East Coast and you're going to end on the West Coast. You're going to start there as a freshman. You're going to graduate there after your senior year. They should have some touchstones, know what they are. What are those things they really want to experience? Maybe I know I want to join a Greek organization. Maybe I know I want to be on an athletic team. Whatever those things are, they should think about and know what their touchstones are. I suggest get a buddy early on or two, and then you have someone to go do take the exits with and go do those fun exploration things with. It's easier to do it when you've got someone to go do it with. I think students should come with that curiosity they had when they were 2 and be open to new possibilities and to see things and learn things and do some things that aren't their touchstones, but be open to those and so they recognize them when they come along as something that might be a good thing to do. I say that knowing that students fully have to keep a balance. I've seen students get involved in so many things, they take too many exits, and pretty soon they're out of whack and not doing what they need to do in the classroom. That doesn't work either. So there's got to be a balance in there. And I always tell students, just like on our road trip, I know we asked for directions more than once. It's okay to ask for directions. We don't always applaud that in our society, but for college students, when they get stuck on something, there are a lot of people, a lot of resources. Stop and ask for directions. Everybody wants to help you. Everybody wants to move them in the right direction and help link them up with the resources they need. No harm in asking for that. But most of all, don't get so stuck on getting to the destination, but just enjoying the journey along the way. I can tell you friends from Roanoke and people I've met along the way who graduated from Roanoke, their life's work and their life's passion came from something that they did on one of those exits that they never really thought about. They just did it kind of on a whim, and it changed their lives. And they found something that they wouldn't have otherwise found if they had been wearing their blinders and just going from point A to point B. So that's how my wish for students in their approach to college. And that's all I've got, but I'm happy to take some questions.
Well, Dr. Pokendorf, thank you so much. Do you mind unmuting sharing your screen, and then we can address some of the questions that we have been given to us.
There you go.
Great. Hi. That was
scared me
really
for a minute.
wonderful.
Oh, thank you. I hope it
Really
was helpful.
wonderful. Thank you so much. My coworker and I were chatting while you were talking, and we were both lamenting. We wish we had gotten this advice when we were doing our college search years and years ago. So thank you so much. I'm going to start with, so we've had some questions about test scores. I think one of the questions is, if schools are saying it's test optional, is there still going to be an obvious way to submit test scores?
Yes.
And then the second part of that is, if schools are saying it's test optional, is there truly value to submitting test scores? And how could you weigh in on that? Or how can schools be kind of not biased if some school students submit test scores and others don't? So it's a two-part question.
Great question. I think that certainly the scores are still valuable. I don't mean to insinuate at all that they aren't, because they are an important piece of telling the colleges, giving us a fuller picture and telling us a little bit about the student's potential. There are many times so it will always be useful, but there are times when it's still preferable to having them because, for example, if someone applies to our honors program at Roanoke, that's a program for top students. The faculty who select the students for the honors program are really going to be a bit lost without the scores because they don't have as much knowledge about the student's ability as they would have if they have the scores. There also could be some difference in admission. If a student, I'll describe a student who has average or a little above average grades, but they have a strong score, that tells us they have potential that they haven't maybe been living up to quite in high school, or maybe you're moving in that direction. It just gives us more information. So, and it could make a difference in scholarship levels. Talk to your admissions people about it. They'll guide you. I know, for example, on our team, admissions counselors are going to talk students through that and talk about the score and say whether you should submit it or not. The colleges will also tell you that their test score blind, which means you can give it, but they'll decide kind of whether to use it or not. That's the case at Roanoke too.
Great. Similar to that note, is there value of submitting AP scores that you've gotten on your AP exams, especially if you can't submit like the ACT or the SAT?
That absolutely good question. That would be another clue to us. And so, yes, if you've got them, submit them. Oftentimes, some of the AP scores, we don't receive them until like June, right after students graduate from high school. So they're maybe not as useful in the admissions process at that point, but they are essential in placement. A student may place out of a certain course depending on their AP score, and so colleges definitely want those. Just depends on how early the student can submit them to the college as to how they're used. Generally speaking, I'll just go a little bit more on that one. If a student has a score, this is true of Roanoke and schools like Roanoke, but again, it could be university or college specific. If a student has a score of a 3 on an AP exam, they usually get competency for that course, which means they've checked the box, they've got that course. They still have to take the credit, but it now becomes an elective. If they have a 4 or a 5 in a content area, then they get credit for that course, which means I've got one course toward graduation right there. So good to ask that question of the colleges.
We had a question specifically about commuter student applications. So how is the admissions process different for students who would like to be commuter students? Is there a different process?
No, there really isn't. That's a great question, though. Everything would be the same. The only thing that would really be different is when they file the application, they would check that commuter box instead of the resident box, but everything else pretty much stays the same. Obviously, when they get to the enrollment stage, they're not selecting housing, but they would still be selecting their courses. But the process looks pretty much the same. I think students who are commuters should similarly look at the college campus and experience. Our hope is, and we know that successful commuter students are those who are engaged on campus and involved in different clubs and organizations, and not just going to take their classes and going home again.
Yeah, it seems like a great question if you live in a setting where you have more than one option, is even asking how that college supports its commuter students. I think that would be an important question. Let's see. Benefits of speaking and connecting with an admissions counselor. How do you network with admissions counselors?
Thank you for asking that, because I forgot to mention something. At Roanoke, for example, it's very simple, because if you go to our website or if you get an email, which you will, if you're on our radar, you'll get an email from your admissions counselor. There's a link on the bottom of their signature area of their email that you can click on to set up a time to talk with them. And you can decide whether you want to talk on the phone or you want to do a Zoom so you can talk face to face, or you can simply send an email. I know a lot of students don't like to make a phone call, but they can call anytime. Most of us have cell phones and welcome texts even from students. We communicate with a lot of students through text. So we'll do it whatever way is most comfortable for you.
Great.
Oh, and I didn't mention this, I'm sorry to say this, but I didn't mention this earlier, but students can also connect with their admissions person through a high school visit. Right now we're doing those virtually, but hopefully next year we'll be doing them in person again at your high schools, but they can connect like we are and through a Zoom kind of a venue and talk to their admissions counselor, or a college fair even.
So we're getting some questions via email, but again, to the viewers, if you'd like to submit one in the chat feature, just let us know. But here's one that just came in via email. I have a daughter who works very hard and gets good grades, but she really struggles with timed tests. She is terrified of the SAT. She is a junior right now and has always been homeschooled with outside classes. So I know that SAT is important to help with admissions. We did an SAT prep course and she worked hard, but it did not make her faster to complete the questions. If she gets a poor SAT score, can she still be accepted based on her grades, essays, and recommendations?
At Roanoke, we would certainly look strongly at her as an applicant. I can't speak for other colleges, but we typically like to see some type of a score from homeschooled students just to give us that fuller picture. I would say she should take it and submit it and talk with her admissions counselor because, again, the most of the weight in our decisions about admission are on how the student has been performing academically for the 3 years they've been in high school. That day-to-day experience is important. So, but the score would give us a little bit more of a clue, and then we have a conversation. That interview or that conversation with your admissions counselor is so critical because we get a sense of what kind of determination a student has. They come through in a different way than when we're just looking at grades on a page.
Um, let's see. Another question, and this probably is just advice because I think at Roanoke, you've already said that demonstrated interest is really important and helpful to the admissions counselors. But what about an institution, maybe a university that does not, who publicly states they do not take into account demonstrated interest? What
Then
is your advice in kind of navigating or helping yourself stand out?
there are ways a student can stand out. I still think student can still reach out via an email or something like that. I think it's important still, even though they're saying demonstrated interest isn't important. It doesn't hurt to reach out and just touch base with that counselor. Of course, there's a balance there. You don't want to bug them too much, but just to reach out and let them know what's on your mind and what you're interested in is helpful. Um, there's another tool that's used right now called ZME. A lot of students use it in supplementing or in place of an essay where they can actually produce a little video that comes with their application. And so that's another way to stand out. We've seen some creative things there. Students could show artwork or whatever their thing is, or they could, just talk or sing or whatever they want to do. It's some kind of a video that they can send. That's a personal touch as well. Not required, just welcomed.
So I actually had a friend ask me this question. She had asked if the parent should attend the interview. So if your child has an opportunity to do an interview, whether it's in person or virtually these days, should the parent be involved, or is that not a common practice? Should it just be the student and the admissions counselor?
I think again, how this works depends on the college and the comfort level of the student and the parent, but we'll ask the student, would you like to talk with us, just you and me, the counselor and the student, or would you like your parents to be there? We leave it up to you in most cases. But the only thing that I would say about it, I'm not sure it matters totally, except in this one case, when we're having a conversation, we're trying to get to know a student better. And we ask a question because we're trying to get to know what you're excited about. We want to tell you about those things, your student about those things. So we ask the student a question and then the parents answer. And then we ask the student another question and then another parent answers. We're not talking to the student. That's not so helpful. And sometimes I know as a parent, it's hard to keep our mouth shut, but we want to talk to the student, whichever way you go. Some colleges may, feel more strongly and dictate it more than Roanoke does. We like choice, but others may not. And some colleges, you're not going to have any chance for an interview. They just don't do it that way.
Right. So I think we have one last question. How do I find more than one college that seems like a good fit for me? So broadening your choices in case that one that you're putting all your effort and hopes into doesn't feel the same way, or it doesn't turn out that way. So what is the best way to find more than one college that you can feel excited and confident and comfortable with?
I think it goes back to that part of the funnel where you are where your student is looking at the different colleges with the criteria that meet the criteria that is important to them, and then visiting those campuses. I think they visit as many campuses as they are interested in. I'll tell you, many times we talk to students who are really torn when they get down to two colleges and they just can't make a decision from one to the other. They like them both, and I always feel for students when that happens. But usually when they get their acceptances, students have more than one choice. And I, again, I'll tell you that I always tell students it's a head and heart decision. They've got to listen to their heart as well as their head in it, because I've seen students along the way make a decision to attend a college that gave them the biggest scholarship, for example, and it just wasn't the right fit. But the student, I think of one student when I was up in the upper Midwest, he finally transferred and left a full ride scholarship to go to the University of Minnesota because the small college he was at with the full scholarship was never the right fit for him. And so he was miserable. It's got to be a heart and head decision.
Well, that's wonderful advice. Thank you, Dean Pogodorf. This has just been wonderful advice all around. We certainly appreciate all your expertise and advice. You've been doing this a long time. And so thank you for sharing all this with our guest watching tonight. And again, thank you to all who have joined us this evening for this NOKELive event. We invite you to join us for any of our upcoming NOKELive events. Next week, we're actually hosting two. On Wednesday, the evening of Wednesday, September 30th, we'll have one on the topic of healthcare from the Hill, from the Capitol, a legislative look at healthcare. And then on Thursday, October 1st at noon, we have faculty and one of our board of trustees who will discuss art beyond the walls, with a look at three really unique approaches to art here at the college that are not what you think traditionally, art hanging on the walls in a gallery. So hope that you all can join us for those two events and more that we have coming. Again, for more information, visit our website at roanoke.edu/alumni and visit the Alumni Hub. There you can find links to all the upcoming NOKELive events, as well as the ones that we have already completed over the course of the summer and fall. So again, thank you, Dr. Pogendorf, and everyone take care and stay well.
Take care.
Bye-bye.